first things first, having started the Humble Kingdom, we have the Beginner's Guide to Natural Law running very, very well. A lot of really, really good feedback so far. So what we did is when we began this, we put a limited number of students to be able to enter into the course. The reason for that is we wanted to keep it relatively small scale so that as we progress with each iteration, which we're calling updates, like imagine you buy a phone and you have its version like 1. And as you have the life of the phone, each new software update should theoretically, not in these cases sometimes with certain companies, but they improve the functionality of the device. And as you purchase it, you get each of those subsequent updates as part of your purchase. So what we wanted to do was keep it in a small scale so that as we put in the updates, we managed to make it a course that really suits the students, not what we think is what and how people should learn, but provide the framework for people to be able to go through the course that's already there, provide the feedback, ask more questions like, what is it that would really make me as a student embody this lesson? How could it be taught? What other information do I need to complement what's already there to be able to fully embody this lesson and express it properly, fully into the world from who I really am? And the reason it's not based on things like fines and taxes and how to deal with police or whatever is, that's not what natural law is. Those are governed by natural laws. Those are an extension, such as commerce or trusts or anything that people have a big fixation on. Those are an extension of natural law, but in and of themselves are not actually natural law. So natural law is what governs our law, L-O-R-E, and that's our story. So what's our story? Who am I really fundamentally? So that's why it's called Beginner's Guide to Natural Law, Know Thyself. So as you get to know yourself more, as a default mechanism or a default agreement, what happens is that the law, L-O-R-E, that story begins to be essentially co-written with your blueprint or the creator or God or life or whatever you want to call that, like your soul's calling. And as that happens, and it's in conjunction with, or it happens under the laws, L-A-W, that essentially govern like, cause and effect. And whether or not our expression into the world results in something that's successful, but not successful in like I have millions of dollars in my bank account, successful insofar as I have inner peace. I inherit my kingdom, which is all internal, because I'm actually starting to come from that place that I'm meant to. So I guess that begs the question, well, why wouldn't we be coming from that place that we're meant to? Well, underneath everything, we could have what we call essence. And essence is so subtle. It's like the Tao, you cannot define it. You can't write it in words. You can't speak it. It's not something you can put your finger on. You can only, finger pointing to the moon, point towards it, allude to it. It's something that you feel. And then from that essence, before we make our world into reality or the world that we experience together, there are so many layers. And those layers are programs, constructs, simulations, illusions, mirror images, so on and so forth, that stand between that which we truly are and the world that we experience. So as we follow the natural laws, we're able to navigate that so that we can start dissolving some of these illusions, and those illusions are what keep us indebted. So a lot of the times we think that debt has to do with like, I've got a credit card or I got a mortgage for a house, but debt has almost nothing to do with money. There is a monetary version of debt, but debt in itself is energetic. It's something of what you might call more of a spiritual nature or a soul nature, something that's non-physical, non-tangible in that way. So if we're indebted, if we dissolve those illusions, we start to come more into, you could call it like into the black or into ourself, to start running on true currencies, true meaning, true value. These are all in what you would call a private. These are more in line with the natural laws, and these are guided by the natural law, L-O-R-E, the story. Like, how does our character work in this world? And as we find who we truly are, who we really are, well, that law, that story changes. It's met with or guided by the laws like cause and effect. And then the expression into the world is much, much closer. And some people do get to a pure expression into life or into the world, but a much closer expression, a pure expression of our essence. What makes us unique? Because you're probably aware, you can have a lot of different people say the exact same words, and there'll be a huge disparity in the meaning or what's received from that expression. So somebody who's speaking from who they truly are will send out a resonance that you can feel beyond just the words. The words are the same, but somebody bringing that from who they really are, like closer to that essence, it's going to carry further. Something else is communicated that you can't put your finger on. Then you could get somebody who just hears that and goes, that sounds good, and I'm good looking and I'm an influencer, and I'll say the same thing. I'll post that on my account. I'll just copy it. I'll whatever. And look, it can carry, but it might get a lot of likes and things like that. We're just using social media as an example or an analogy because we're using it now, but it doesn't have the substance. Okay, it doesn't come from something deeper, something more meaningful with more inherent value. So what can accrue is still debt. Like you get 1 million likes or 1 million followers for the same thing that somebody else said. It's just a mirror image of it, and it carries no inherent value or meaning, but accrues lots of fanciness. And so that's the equivalent of like, the public system, or essentially still being indebted. Whereas if it comes from a true place, you might not have the likes and the followers and whatever. People might associate like, oh, that currency is really valuable, but it's not. It's like an illusion. And as you actually feel the real bank account, like the real currency, what tends to happen is along with the character that you embody and you activate in this world through law, L-O-R-E, and the natural laws, you tend to be looked after pretty well in the what you might call the material ways as well. And it's something that I'll say this, it can't be taken away. Okay, all the other stuff can be taken away. That's why it's illusory. It carries no inherent meaning or value because it can be taken away immediately. That value can change based on other people's perception or agreed societal perception. That's in the world. So that is reality. But ality or of God or your nature is just totally different to that. But you can have the outward success as well. You're meant to have the outward success as well if you're doing it right under natural law. That's the thing. That's where I think a lot of people kind of get a bit confused with this sort of stuff. Like, all right, I'm just going to be moral and just and live in the private and live like as a natural man or woman. And, I'm going to do things the right way. So therefore I'll take a vow of poverty or something like that. Or if I just speak the truth, no one will ever value it and hear it. And therefore I'll still have to like work another job. But it doesn't work like that. Because if it's coming from that place that is closer to who we really are, that essence that is ever so subtle and all powerful, it's going to also mirror that level of wealth inside will be met externally as well. It'll be mirrored externally as well. But when there's like a distortion in there, then yeah, it can end up looking like poverty, like I'm sacrificing myself for quote unquote the truth, in which case that's not the real thing because it's likely not even the truth in the first place. That's another illusion that we'll spin for ourselves. In other words, it's an identity. And identity, if you want to take that into the public side of the equation, like your ID, like you associate with that, you agree to be that. What are you agreeing to be? You're agreeing to be a subject, a slave, non-living. You are an ID, an identification, a piece of paper. You're not living. That doesn't have a heartbeat. That doesn't have blood flowing through it, life flowing through it. That wasn't created by life, God, creator. That was created by the State Department to which you belong if you are your identification. Likewise, if you are your identities, like I'm a this guy, I'm a that woman, I'm a whatever, it's less, but it's still in that form of slavery. I'm a subject and so on and so forth. So therefore you are indebted. Even if you have millions of followers, millions of likes, or even millions of dollars, you're still indebted because it's somewhat, there's like levels to this, of course, like you're not going to cover it all in a live stream. That's what the course is for. But you get the picture of like why we did it this way, like what it's based on. So I guess one of the other questions people were asking is like, why did we do it? Why did I walk away from the last position that I was in and essentially just give all of that business away? Because that's not a smart move to do if that's your sustenance, So I began to be aware of natural law probably something like 20 years ago. And before that, I was still getting, schooled in it without really knowing what natural law was. And I had to go through a lot of health challenges. I had to go through a lot of, societal, family challenges, a lot of pain in many different ways to be able to really understand or understand what it was that I was going through and why. So I also had a somewhat naturally rebellious nature. So I always knew that if I was given a fine or something like that for parking somewhere, I'm like, how is that real? How is that something that I have to do? I always ask that question, like, why would I have to do that? Why do I have to ask permission? Like, I'm not 5 anymore. I don't have to ask permission to go to my friend's house. I don't have to ask permission to stay up late or get up earlier. Like, why am I asking? Why is there permission? And who and from whom and for what reason? Like, it never made sense to me. And I know that a lot of people are like this. That's why they follow like my account and people similar to me, is that you just have this inherent knowing that it's like, no one can really tell me what to do. I might not know why. I might not know why lawfully, legally, or whatever, but I just know it. It's an inherent knowing. Like, I govern myself, right? So then losing my health, I was like, okay, well, in the beginning, I was outsourcing, blaming, I was a victim, et cetera, et cetera. But as I improved, it was in line with how much responsibility I was taking for the position that I was in. And that included being homeless, that included several times living without money as well. That included a lot of pain, that included a lot of fairly what seemed like real reasons why other people were the cause or the problem. I definitely had my coaches to blame. I definitely had these doctors who didn't do things right in the beginning to blame. And in some cases, you could argue that that was true, but at the end of the day, my health only improved as I started to rein that in, remove enemies, remove blame, and start to sit with myself in the position that I was in, have some acceptance for that, have the experience and be willing to have that experience, look for the gift. Like, if I'm meeting the pain teacher, I'm going to be a student and humble myself. And as I gleaned the lessons, which were actually lessons in natural law, my health improved. Go figure. So from there, obviously, that then extended into, okay, well, now I'm starting to understand now, like, why I don't have to do things, why I don't need permission, why I don't need to be quote unquote allowed to do things in the world. Because if I have self-governance and self-control and I have agency within, well, I don't need to deal with third parties and agents in commerce. I don't need that in my life. So as a default agreement from the creator, my agreement, like, straight between two parties, not with third party interlopers, well, things started to improve a lot. And I also started to get results without having to like study the law. And as I became aware of people who were dealing exclusively with things like offers to contract under commerce, things like trusts, crown law, contract law, commerce, trying to use acts like, the Magna Carta and whatever. It's like they were getting zero results in the real world, and I was getting results, as in, like, I won't say what they are publicly, but like I was getting results, and they go, how did you do that? And I'm like, how are you not getting that? You've spent 10 to 20 years studying this kind of law, and I've just gone and done that because I figured it out for myself because of the natural laws. And so it's kind of like, and it's the same with, improving from a health condition or having better relationships or anything. They're all governed under these laws. So when 2020 rolled around and I'd already, left the quote unquote health industry because of how sick it really is, and then influencers and all that, I just kind of like, okay, I'll just leave people to that for a while. I'll take out film and photography. Did that for about 5 years. Was telling other people's stories, as in producing work for them so they could tell their stories. Then 2020 rolled around and I made that video, Can You Catch a Virus? And that was meant for just a few friends, as you probably know the story, but then that got seen by tens of millions of people. And for the first few months, I tried to not accept the offer that life gave me. So the offer that life gave me under natural law was that this is an inciting incident in your own hero's journey. You have more to do in this world. You have a voice that you need to use. It's different from people needing to hear. So a lot of people have this idea, they're like, people need to hear my voice. I don't personally agree with that. You can make an argument for it, which I would tend to agree with, but the bigger agreement is that I need to use my voice. So that's very different from people need to hear my voice. One is not so humble. One is just like an acceptance of the call, which takes humility. It's actually the opposite of ego. You need to drop your ego to be able to, heed the call to use your voice, because it can be scary, and for what reason and why and who would listen and why and who would care and I should be doing this and what if this and blah, 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 blah. I'm not good enough. I have a stupid voice or whatever. Like, we come up with those internal stories, which is our law. So under the natural laws, we actually end up, indebted in various ways to our programs that sit between us, like the real us, and the world that is the reality. So anyhow, I began to use my voice. It took a few months, but I was like, okay, this keeps coming to me. Like, so much kept coming to me. I was still trying to focus on the film and photography work that I was doing. The aftermath of that video was like a, it was a bit of a, what would you call it? Like a, just an annoyance. Like, it was a bit like, this is getting in the way. But eventually I realized, okay, like, I can't hide anymore. I have to use my voice. So that's when I started sharing more information about health, about natural laws, and then how that relates to the world that was presenting itself at the time. But here's the thing. Not many people, I'm not going to say everybody, because there were a lot of people that did get it, but the majority of people did not get the concept of knowing thyself. And of course, as a default mechanism, didn't know who they were. So they were asking for, what do I say? What do I do? And the analogy I always gave was that it was like people were stepping into the battlefield and they had no fight training, no battle training, no, they'd never been put under pressure. They'd never been battle tested. They don't even know what techniques to use, for example. They don't know strategy. So what they were doing is putting themselves on the battlefield and then going, hey, what do I do if they shoot at me or come at me with a sword or something? So it's like, okay, things are happening in real time very, very quickly. So here's what you would do or say. But without knowing who you are and without really knowing, about natural laws and how they interface and interplay with you in the world and what you're dealing with, it was always like not really enough. In some cases, it helped a lot of people. People kept businesses, people were able to go to work, people were able to avoid being fleeced by the government, telling them they have to pay fines and whatever. People got family members back, got to see family members, got to cross borders, all with some of the things that I helped them with. But at the end of the day, it's still, even in those situations where people quote unquote succeeded, there was still something missing. And it drained me a lot, because I was like, there's something that I need to give that I can't give right now. And then that turned into starting a platform and everything. And it was always like it was in debt. I was always indebted, because it never got to start from where it needed to start if people truly wanted to know how and why they just don't have to do stuff. How and why they are not healthy. How and why they can be healthy. How and why they can go where they please, do what they want. There's subtleties to this as well, of course, but just generally speaking, right? So that's why I just stopped it all. I was like, I can't continue to do this. It is being indebted under the natural laws. And I need to, step away from things, even though it's like you would say from a financial point of view, that's not a smart idea. And I would agree with you in many ways, but it's what you sometimes need to do to undergo that next part of the hero's journey, to be able to stop that indebtedness continuing, to start to really inherit your own kingdom, which is really like why it was called the humble kingdom. And it's funny because some people are like, you can't call yourself humble. It's not, and I'm like, it's not. It's got nothing to do with me. At no stage does it say I'm a king or I'm humble. Quite the opposite in a lot of cases. The humble kingdom is that place within all of us that we have as a birthright that we are meant to inherit. Once we come out of debt, once we undo a lot of the programming, once we get to know ourselves, connect to that part of us that is our unique part of life, like why we're really here and how we can truly express into the world to make an actual change in the world, not because we want or need to make a change, but because we want or need to be who we are, outside of what we're told, how we're conditioned, how the system makes it's like this is supposed to be, and you won't be able to do this in 5 years, and you're never going to be healthy, and we're going to do this. None of that's necessarily true. It is if you make the agreement, but it's not true in and of itself, because that keeps you indebted. So that's why it's relating to the kingdom, and you have to be humble. You have to soften into it to be able to receive it. So that's why it's called the humble kingdom. And these laws, like these lessons, are something that as I'm now being able to share them in a proper learning format, I finally feel like I'm breathing properly. And what that means is that I have now finally been able to put in these lessons in a learning format that as you go through them, you'll then be able to pick up, okay, this is not just what to say, but why you say it. So if you are met with a different situation that doesn't require that particular word, line, technique, notice, do you even need to handle that? As you know yourself, you figure that out for yourself. You are creating in real time. And as a maxim of law, what you create, you own. That's very important to remember in many different respects. What you create, you own. It's a maxim of law. And that comes under the rules of natural law. So if that's the case, we're now authoring, and therefore we are the authority in that situation. So now we have agency within. We not only do not have to deal with agents being like Agent Smith in the Matrix, which is an analogy for agents in commerce, meaning government of any kind, government just meaning mind control. So that's council, police, federal agents of some kind, border control, customs, anyone pretending or assuming to have authority, control, can tell you what to do and what not to do, and has some way to back that up, which they don't. That's all in the public system. Now, they do under certain circumstances, if you're belligerent, if you're showing yourself to be an incapable, incompetent subject or belligerent and looking to cause harm, then yes. But we're just talking in the generic sense insofar as who we are in this world as a man or a woman. So yeah, going through that and being able to provide this has now given me a lot of a breath of fresh air, where now that I've got that in place, the world is always going to be changing at a rapid pace, not because of what people assume, like, the elites or anything like that, but because of the age of the realm that we're in. It naturally goes through cycles. It naturally speeds up at certain times. And you can create some space from that so that you're not like in fight flight mode, which a lot of people honestly still are. From 2020 till now, a lot of people are still in fight flight mode. And you also have a lot of people with large accounts on Instagram, because I've seen them, that sell you ideas, sell you products, sell you supplements, sell you a lot of different things based on fear. Like, they're spraying the skies, the soils aren't healthy, there's too much EMFs, there's this, that, and the other. It's like, that's not why you need things. And getting things like outsourcing in that respect doesn't fix that anyway, even if that was true. So the default agreements that are being made are all inherently disempowering. No one's authoring, no one's the authority. The authority is a thing you're scared of in that situation. So it's a really, really important lesson under natural law that's based on default agreements. Again, that's all in the course too. So that's why we made it, so that as you get to know all this sort of stuff, you can then come into the world, or even onto Instagram, for example, and someone's trying to sell you on some like yak juice from the Himalayas or something because there's EMFs or there's sprays or something. It's like, none of that's true. And you'll be able to look at that. You'll be like, okay, what's the offer? What's the agreement? What's the default agreement? How do I handle that? Am I outsourcing or insourcing? Where's the authority? And like, is that even real, or is that an illusion? Like, all of that, you'll be able to decipher, decode, or discern for yourself just based on the rules of natural law, which is why it's like, it's taken me 5 years. I'm like, I'm not doing platforms anymore. I'm not doing interviews. I'm not posting so much. I'm not selling anything. I'm not doing anything until I actually get that in place. Because now that I've got that in place, I can help to share, more. Like, I'll be able to bring out, things related purely to health. I'll be able to bring out how you would deal with specific situations that come in the world based on the beginner's guide to natural law. Because that's like the fundamentals. Like, the getting to know yourself is absolutely fundamental. Everything else is just trying to put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. It will never work. And that's what it's felt like for the last 5 years for me. But now that the course is almost complete, it's great for me. And it's great for the people that have done it so far. And maybe for you, if you're watching this and it's something that you resonate with, it's something that you want to do as well. But as the world changes, in my opinion, like, this is the time, well, any time is the time, now is the time to get ahead of the curve. Because who, in all honesty, if you're watching this and you watch this later, was ready for, as in ahead of the curve when 2020 rolled around. Like a lot of people still thought A, viruses were a real thing, and B, you could catch them. Okay, until me and other people were just talking a lot about it, most people didn't know that. So immediately you're on the back foot. Then you're told you have to cover your face. How many people knew how or why, or the fact that you just don't have to do what people tell you in the first place, or why? How do you back that up? Either with the ways that you, like people were leaning towards, like, well, where does it say that I don't have to do it? It's like, don't worry about that. Get to know who you are. That's a higher standing. You don't have to because of who you are. You don't have to because you don't have to. Then you could also refer to like something that's on a piece of paper. But if you're going for the piece of paper first and foremost, and that's your reliance, you know, that's sketchy territory right there, because that's going to get you not real far in life. And it can be taken away at any time. And then where's your confidence? What are you standing on then? Nothing. It's taken out from under your feet. You fall, you crash, you burn, you're worse than you were before. So getting to know who you are is like paramount. It's the only thing. And everything else is an extension of that. So as the world changes, make no mistake, there will be other things that you would do well, you will do better if you start learning now some of the lessons of natural law and how to know thyself to a greater degree. Very similar to, let's say you knew that the streets were getting rougher. Okay, so rather than wait until somebody's attacking your family and you're like, how do I deal with somebody with a baseball bat? How do I choke somebody out or whatever? Like, wouldn't it be better to start learning some jujitsu now, for example, so that as the world begins to change a little, you're already ahead of the curve. Not only are you more confident and comfortable in yourself, and therefore as a default agreement or a positive catch-22, probably are not going to be in a position or a situation that's necessary to deal with that. But if and when that did occur, you can take care of it, at least to a much better degree than trying to figure it out on the spot, which is what people were trying to do with quote unquote natural law from 2020 to 2024. So that's why we started the course. That's why we made it. That's why I gave everything else away to be able to do it. And that's why it's called the Humble Kingdom, not because it's got to do with, you know, calling yourself humble or being a king or a queen, but because that's the nature of who we truly are, how we get out of debt, we're not indebted anymore, and how we inherit the kingdom that all of us have. So that's getting much, much closer to who we are. The expression to the world becomes much clearer and more pure, and things are just better. Now, I didn't finish that story I started before, so just quickly, if somebody has a pure expression and it's felt and heard and they don't get the likes or the whatever, and somebody copies that and gets all the likes and all the followers and whatever, even money from it, they're still in debt. Now then, if you take that a step further and just have AI spit that message out of a computer or a phone at you, like what has a resonance that carries inherent meaning and value and what doesn't? Same words, exactly the same message. What's the difference? So these are the subtleties that as you start to decode those, you start to get much, much closer to who you really are, which then, as that becomes a pure expression into the world or a pure polarity, what people are trying to chase in the fictional world, you can get for real. And when you get it for real, no one can take it away. It's yours. You earned it for real. And it's always there. It's always there. It's such a beautiful thing. So, you know, like have me and Summer, have we mastered that? Of course not. But it's like you get to a certain place in life where you've earned the ability or the right to teach something. And then as you have that ability, you go through your teaching phase. And then after that, it's like, you don't do that anymore. It's like, once you really surpass that or transcend that, you're like not really on the same radar. You don't have Instagram and stuff. You don't have the same means as other people. You're just affecting the realm or the world in a level that certain people where they're at, they'll never even know you exist. And yeah, that's generally, hang on, someone's trying to call. Yeah, you can do a lot of stuff with paper, but if you don't really honestly know who you are, it's kind of not going to have the effect that you might hope. And that's the thing, like when people hope that a piece of paper is going to fix things for them, let's just quickly break that down. So you want to send a notice to the quote unquote government. What's the government? It's mind control. There is a time and place to do that. Let's just backtrack 1 second. Okay, so in 2020 to 2021, I was part of helping 2 different outfits get their notices of non-consent for vaccines, okay? Now, I didn't do any of them. Not from the first person who's a Muppet who I helped make $2 million and still uses my video on their site after I told him to take it down. It's like, if you know your stuff, like, why do you still need my video on your site? Like, really? Like, if you're really good, can't you like make your own video with the same or a better message? It's just so lazy. But that's, anyway, that's so then I also did it for another platform that I was on. I wasn't part of the other platform. And again, vaccine non-consent notices. So let's just quickly have a look at this and what the default agreements are. Now, did I send one of those off? No. Why did I not send one off? Because when you know who you are and when you know, like, when I say you know who you are, it's just the degree to which you know who you are in relation to the offers of the world around you. So that's always a journey. I'm still on it, as is everybody else. But I knew who I was to enough of a degree that I was like, if I send a notice of non-consent to vaccines and whatever to the government, I am putting my standing lower than it naturally is. So the reason that I didn't is 2 things. One, I already had a standing above that. 2, I could discern, and I'm like, no one's asking or telling me to do anything. There's this like American citizens, Australian residents, like everybody this, everyone this, act, everyone, everybody. It's like, it's not me. Like, I'm not that. Like, what? I would be actually jumping out of a higher jurisdiction into a lower one to handle something that doesn't even apply to me in the first place. So the default agreement that I will be making is that there is a real threat, which there is not, that somebody else has some kind of power that I have to, like, level out, which they do not. So it would be a lowering of oneself to get into something that's a fiction in the first place. Now, if the quote unquote government did send something specifically to, not me, remember, my name, they're 2 very separate things, to my name, I would, on behalf of my name, handle that. But that's never going to happen. I can promise you that's not going to happen. I was saying this for the last 5 years. No one's coming to your door. No one's going to make you do anything. It just doesn't exist, okay? It's all through illusions, all through offers. And when people fall for illusions, which is mind control, government, well, that's how people end up in the situations they end up in. So that's why I didn't do it, because also what it's doing is it's affirming like it's affirming a disempowerment. But people needed something to feel a bit more empowered at the time, which is why I, like told people that was available to do, but I never did it for all those reasons and many more. I never did it. So can't even remember why so you can, tell quote unquote the government that you're of legal age or whatever. And does that have some positive effect? Sure. But you can also literally just be living your life and it doesn't matter. So in a live stream, I can't obviously explain the ins and outs of exactly why and the mechanisms behind everything. I have to do a full course on that. But just plain and simple, the answer is you can do that. Does it have an effect? Can it? It can. Is it always disempowering to do that? No. Can it be empowering? Yes. Do you need to do that? No. Can you be focusing on, can you be embodying, living in a higher jurisdiction that is away from that altogether? Yes. So that's what the current course is mostly about. Will I help people in the future with that other side of things, like in that paperwork side of things? Sure. But not until, it's not that it's like useless. Plenty of other people do it. And I've seen enough people at this stage of the game, I've seen enough people copyright their name. I've seen enough people file I'm a living being, notice, affidavit, whatever, status correction, whatever you want to call it, with commercial entities, with the quote unquote government, with trusts, with whatever, and still pay taxes, lose a house, end up in jail, can't cross a border, get passports taken away, get fined, don't know how to handle the fine, still have to pay it. I've seen that, like, I'm not making it up, hundreds of times. I've seen that hundreds of times. So can it have that effect? Yes. But why doesn't it have the effect universally? Because people don't know who they are. That's why Beginner's Guide to Natural Law, know thyself. That's like the fundamental, that's everything. Then you can do other little things that might like help dot an I, or cross a T, which might just level things out a little, make paperwork a little easier, depending on your goals in life. Because if your goals in life or your mission involves some of that and involves a lot of the public system, then yes, some of that can help. But just be aware you can actually get yourself into more trouble because of the default agreements that you are making unbeknownst to you. But you will know what those are as you get to know yourself. You'll inherently just know like what default agreements are being made, which in another way of speaking is like assent rather than consent, but it's still the agreement. So yeah, you want to be careful with that sort of stuff, and who you're writing it to, what that's for, because remember there's always something behind the something and something else. So just for a, let's put it into a story context, there's a mirror. And then on the front of the mirror, there's writing, mirror, mirror on the wall. Like there's writing on it. Then there's the mirror. Then what's behind the mirror is like an entity, and we're going to call that entity Doodah Diddad. And Doodah Diddad's a bit of a nasty entity, really likes to take loose human energy, is very like demonic in nature, in energy, and just loves to mess with people and loves to take their energy. And if you're really handling a lot of stuff and that's what's behind it, it's like, I wouldn't do it. Doesn't mean that that's the case in every situation, but I'm just saying like, just be careful of default agreements that you're making. Now, the other side of the equation, do not be afraid to write notices and go ahead. I covered that in my notices course, which will be redone for public consumption. Probably, I can't say when, but it'll happen. But you'll be able to do more in the world with the Beginner's Guide to Natural Law course that's currently there than you will with like just going to that first, because you probably won't understand how to use it in every circumstance, or even understand like that whole concept of what's behind, and then what's behind that, because that's where the currency flows if you're not sure of what's being created. So for those that are interested in the Beginner's Guide to Natural Law, you got to go to thehumblekingdom.com, click on the Beginner's Guide. You'll be sent an email with the information on it and the offer. And then the current offer is only open until the end of April. And after that, we're cutting it off. So if you want to get in at the introductory price to be part of being able to kind of like help write the course, so to speak, as in there's already heaps in there, but you'll have the opportunity to actually be like, okay, I kind of need to understand this concept more, and how I learn best is like this, and actually have it tailored in that way, which you won't have once the course gets to its full public stage where we've finalized it all, me and Summer, and then it just goes for sale direct to public, which is not the way it's set up currently. You have to go through that process of getting the offer first, agree the offer, and then get it. And yeah, so you've only got till the end of the month if you want to jump on that. This is auspicious April, and we're going to be dropping quite a few lessons on why it's such an auspicious month and why April is a month of momentum. So you might have seen the post I did yesterday. If not, quick summary. April is closer to the actual start of a new year under a proper solar and lunar calendar. January is not really the start of the year, but it's the start of it's not a start of a financial year either, but it's a start of an agreed time frame that we have in the world. So as you start, a lot of people come into January and they're like, all right, I'm going to do this year. Like, I'm really going to change myself. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to build that. I'm going to create this. So April, where we're at now, should be a month where we've built enough momentum where it's like, okay, I've started, I've done some groundwork. April's a momentum month. And then from April onwards, as we get through the midway point of the year, getting into the latter part of the year, that's where we're starting to see the fruition of our work at the start of the year. So it's a good month in that respect. It is also closer energetically, properly, to the beginning of a new year. So it's auspicious in that way. And for many other reasons, it's a 9-month. We're in a 9-year. And anyway, a lot of other reasons. Good month. So we're also going to be making a free masterclass on value. The reason I'm making it on value is that in the past, when I've done streams purely on value, it's usually got a really, really good response, because it helps people to figure out more in themselves, like, what relationship do I have with the world around me? Like, why do I think things cost too much? Why do I think a lot of things should be free? Why do I think that I don't really have enough value in the world? Or why am I not truly valued? How does debt work in currencies, and why is there more than one way that that works? And how can I tap into that? So when we do the stream on value, it's a free masterclass. It's part of the classroom sections that are going to be built into the Beginner's Guide to Natural Law course. There's going to be 2 that I'm going to make for free. One on value and one on good versus evil, because this comes up a lot. What, like, surely evil is bad, and there's stuff like, what do we do about it? We can't do nothing about it, etc., etc., etc. If you really start to know what it is and what it really means, you can actually have a proper effect, because what I've never seen happen ever is people deciding for themselves what's bad, wrong, and evil, trying to have a strong polarity with it, trying to change it. It never does anything. All it ever does is strengthen it. So I'm going to break down, because people get confused. They're like, well, but if evil's not evil and it's not bad, and you saying it's not bad and we shouldn't do anything about it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's not what I ever say. And again, even in a live stream, you can't really break it down. You definitely can't break it down in a post on social media. So I'm going to do this full masterclass so that we can break down what it is and what it isn't, what you can and what you can't do about it, how to do stuff about it, what it really means, and then, yeah, really making it so that we can have a positive effect. Because we have peace with it, that's the only way we can change it. The second masterclass is going to be, so that is the second masterclass. So it's going to be value, and then that's after, I think we have 9 more people to take up the course before we release that. And then all the other classes are in the course, but those 2 will be for free. You just have to be on the mailing list. So go to humblekingdom.com, click on the beginner's guide. You'll be sent information on the course, but you'll also be on the mailing list. You'll get to get the 2 masterclasses for free. So I'll leave it there. Thank you guys for joining, and see you on the next one.